The rain hammered against the barn's metal roof like 1,000 tiny fists. David Hayes didn't look up from the irrigation system he was pretending to fix. 3 years on Verdun. 7, and he still couldn't get used to the sound. It reminded him too much of the night the raiders came. His hands moved through the motions automatically. Tighten this valve. Check that pressure gauge. None of it needed fixing. The farm ran itself these days. But sitting in a house with nothing but silence and memories was worse than pretending to work. Something crashed in the back of the barn. David froze. His hand moved to the plasma cutter on his belt. Probably just the wind knocking over old equipment. Probably nothing. But on a frontier colony, probably nothing could get you killed. He moved between the storage containers, boots silent on the concrete floor. Another sound. Softer this time. Almost like breathing. Heavy breathing. The storage corner was dark. His flashlight cut through the shadows and landed on 2 pairs of eyes. They reflected the light like mirrors. Yellow and bright and terrified. David's breath caught in his throat. 2 creatures huddled against the wall. Scales covered their bodies, deep blue and green patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so dulled by dirt and injury. Wings pressed tight against their backs, torn membranes hanging loose. One was larger, maybe the size of teenage human. The smaller one couldn't have been more than child-sized, Drakenai. Dragonfolk? He'd seen pictures in settlement briefings. Dangerous predators, the warnings said. Keep away. Report sightings immediately. The larger one shifted, placing herself between David and the smaller creature. Her lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. A warning that would have been more threatening if she wasn't shaking. Easy, David said quietly. He lowered the flashlight so it wasn't shining in their eyes. I'm not going to hurt you. The larger one's eyes narrowed. She didn't believe him. Smart. David took a step back, giving him space. The movement made the smaller one whimper. The sound hit him like a punch to the chest. He'd heard that exact sound from his daughter Lily the night the raiders came. Pure terror mixed with desperate hope that someone would make it stop. His hand moved away from the plasma cutter. You're hurt, he said, still keeping his voice low. Let me help. The larger one's translator chip crackled. Her voice came out rough and halting. You will call authorities. We know human law. David should call them. Settlement Law Article 47 was clear. Harboring unauthorized alien species meant jail time. Asset seizure. Deportation at minimum. But he kept seeing Lily's face in that smaller creature's terrified eyes. How long since you ate? He asked instead. The question seemed to catch the larger one off guard. She didn't answer. Right. David took another step back toward the barn entrance. Stay here. I'll be back. He left before they could run. Before he could think too hard about what he was doing. The house felt even emptier than usual. David pulled synthetic meat from the freezer. The expensive kind he never bothered buying for himself. Grabbed the medical kit from under the sink. Added a heating blanket because he remembered Drac and I were cold-blooded. When he returned, they were still there. The larger one had positioned herself even more protectively in front of the smaller creature. She watched David's every move as he set the items down and backed away. Eat, he said. I'll wait over here. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then hunger won. The larger one grabbed the meat and tore off a piece, giving it to the smaller one first. The little one's eyes went wide. She ate like she hadn't seen food in days. Probably hadn't. David felt something twist in his chest. They finished the meat in minutes. The larger one kept glancing at David, waiting for the trap to spring. But he just sat on an overturned crate, giving them space. I'm Lyra. The larger one finally said through her translator. This is Nessa, my sister. David. He nodded toward Nessa. She doesn't have a translator? Taken, Lyra said simply. The word held volumes of pain. Nessa made a series of clicking sounds. Lyra's expression softened. She asks, why you help? David looked at the 2 frightened creatures in his barn. Injured. Alone. Running from something that had clearly broken them. Because someone should have helped my daughters, he said quietly. And no one did. The words hung in the air. Lyra stared at him, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. The cuts on your wings need cleaning, David said, changing the subject. Infection out here can kill you in days. Will you let me help? Lyra hesitated. Nessa clicked something urgent. After a long moment, Lyra nodded. David worked carefully, cleaning the wounds while Lyra translated his instructions to keep Nessa calm. The younger sister's wings had been damaged badly. Probably wouldn't heal right without proper medical care. The kind he couldn't provide without raising questions by the time he finished. The sky outside was turning dark. David stood, gathering the medical supplies. "You can't stay in the barn," he said. "Too cold at night. Come inside." "This is trap," Lyra said flatly. But she sounded tired. So tired. "Maybe," David admitted. "But it's a warm trap with more food. You can leave anytime." He walked toward the house without looking back. After a moment, he heard the soft sound of clawed feet on concrete following him. The house lights seemed harsh after the barn's darkness. David watched Lyra and Nessa look around his living room with wide eyes. They'd probably never seen human furniture before. Nessa reached out to touch the couch, then pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. "It's okay," David said. "You can sit." They didn't sit. They stood in the middle of the room, ready to run. David pulled out more food, set out water, found blankets that could handle the heat their bodies generated. Through it all, the sisters watched him with that same mixture of fear and desperate hope. Nessa's eyes kept closing. She swayed on her feet. Lyra supported her, but she looked ready to collapse too. "Sleep," David said. "I'll keep watch." "Why?" Lyra asked. The translator couldn't hide the confusion in her voice. "Why do this?" David looked at the two exhausted creatures in his living room. He thought about his empty house, his empty life, the 3 years he'd spent just going through the motions. "Because I'm tired of being alone," he said honestly. Lyra didn't respond. But slowly, carefully, she helped Nessa settle onto the couch. The younger sister curled into a tight ball, wings folded close. Within seconds, she was asleep. Lyra positioned herself between Nessa and David. Her eyes stayed open, watching, protecting. David settled into his chair across the room. Outside, he heard the familiar hum of settlement patrol, drones passing overhead. His decision to bring them inside suddenly felt very real. Tomorrow would bring complications, questions, danger. But tonight, his house didn't feel quite so empty. And for the first time in 3 years, David Hayes felt something other than the mechanical routine of survival that he felt needed. Sunlight hit David's face, and he jerked awake. His neck ached from sleeping in the chair. For a confused moment, he forgot why he wasn't in his bed. Then he saw the empty couch and remembered everything. David shot to his feet. The blankets lay crumpled on the floor. The sisters were gone. Of course they were gone. He'd been stupid to think they'd stayed. A soft clicking sound came from the kitchen. David moved quietly to the doorway. Nessa stood on a chair, reaching for the cupboard where he kept the dried fruit. Her wings spread slightly for balance. They looked even worse in daylight, the tears in the membrane stark and painful. Lyra appeared from the bathroom, still dripping water. She saw David and immediately moved between him and her sister, always protecting. "We will leave," Lyra said. Her translator made the words flat, but her posture screamed tension. "We only need small food. Then we go." "Where?" David asked. The question seemed to surprise her. "Away." "Away where?" "To the next settlement. They'll scan you at the border." "To the wilderness?" "You won't last a week with those injuries." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Not your problem." "You're in my house eating my food," David said. "That makes it my problem." Nessa clicked something urgent. Lyra shook her head. They were arguing in their own language. Finally, Lyra's shoulders slumped. "There is nowhere," she admitted quietly. "We run for 2 months. Everywhere has laws against us. Everywhere wants to send us back to them." "Back to who?" Lyra's expression hardened. "The collectors. Rich beings who take rare species, keep them in cages, show them to friends." Her claws dug into her palms. "They killed our parents. Took us. We escaped, but they still hunt us." David felt cold anger settle in his chest. He'd heard about the collection rings. Everyone on the frontier had. The Galactic Council claimed they were working to stop it. But bureaucracy moved slow and collectors had money. "How old are you?" he asked. "I have 14 cycles," Lyra said. "Nessa has 9. Children." They were just children. Nessa climbed down from the chair, clutching a bag of dried fruit. She looked at David with those huge yellow eyes. Click something soft. She asks if you are angry. Lyra translated. David crouched down to Nessa's level. The movement made Lyra tense, but she didn't interfere. I'm not angry, he said gently. Eat whatever you want. This is your home now, too. Nessa's eyes went even wider. She looked at Lyra. More rapid clicking. She says we cannot stay, Lyra said. We bring danger. Settlement will find us. You will go to human jail. Maybe, David admitted. But I've got some time before the next compliance check. We'll figure something out. He stood and moved to the kitchen. Started making breakfast the way he used to when his family was alive. Eggs, toast, real coffee that cost too much but tasted like earth. The sisters watched him like he was performing magic. You have any other injuries I didn't see last night? David asked while he cooked. Lyra hesitated, then slowly lifted her arm. A deep gash ran along her forearm, already showing signs of infection. She'd hidden it under her scales. David bit back a curse. Medical kit. Now. He cleaned and bandaged the wound while Nessa ate her dried fruit one piece at a time, savoring each bite. Lyra winced, but didn't make a sound. Tough kid. This needs real antibiotics, David said. The kind I can't get without prescriptions. We know, Lyra said quietly. Is why Nessa wings will not heal right. Is why I get sick sometimes. David's hands stilled. These injuries weren't going to heal on their own. Without proper treatment, infection would spread. Nessa's wings might never work again. Lyra could develop sepsis. Okay, he said. New plan. I've got a friend who asks fewer questions than most. Used to be a medic. I'll see what I can do. Why? Lyra asked again. That same confusion in her voice. We are nothing to you. David looked at the two sisters. Lyra trying so hard to be strong. Nessa watching everything with frightened eyes. My daughters were 8 and 12 when the raiders came, he said quietly. I was at the settlement meeting. By the time I got home, it was too late. I couldn't protect them. Couldn't save them. He met Lyra's eyes. I can't change what happened to my family, but maybe I can change what happens to yours. Lyra stared at him. Something in her expression shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of possibility. Nessa clicked something. For the first time, it didn't sound afraid. She says you are a good human. Lyra translated softly that David's throat tightened. I'm just doing what anyone should do. No, Lyra said. Most humans would call authorities. Would be afraid. You are different. The conversation was interrupted by a loud beep from David's comm unit. He checked the display and felt his stomach drop. Settlement Administrator Mrs. Kowalski. Requesting visit for power usage review. Hide, David said urgently. Now. The sisters didn't argue. Lyra grabbed Nessa, and they moved fast, disappearing into the spare bedroom. David heard the closet door shut. He smoothed his hair, checked his reflection. Tried to look like a man who hadn't just harbored illegal aliens overnight. Mrs. Kowalski arrived in her official vehicle, all business in her gray administrator uniform. She'd always been thorough, probably why she'd noticed the power spike from the heating blankets. David, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Your energy consumption jumped 30% this week. Everything all right. Fix the old heating system, David lied smoothly. Running diagnostics. Testing each zone. She made a note on her tablet. Mind if I come in? Part of standard review. Every muscle in David's body went tense. Of course. She walked through the house with professional efficiency. Living room. Kitchen. Her eyes caught on the extra dishes in the sink. The blankets on the couch. Having guests, she asked casually. Just couldn't sleep, David said. Watched old videos. Fell asleep out here. She hummed non-committally. Moved toward the bedrooms. David's heart hammered. If she opened that closet. If Nessa made a sound. Mrs. Kowalski paused at the spare bedroom door. Her hand reached for the handle. A loud alert blared from her comm unit. She checked it and frowned. Fire suppression failure at the grain warehouse, she muttered. I have to go. We'll reschedule this review. David managed to nod. Anytime. He walked her to the door. Watched her vehicle disappear down the road. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. The closet door opened slowly. Lyra emerged first, Nessa behind her. That was close, David said. Too close, Lyra agreed. We should leave. Before next time. But Nessa was looking around the house. At the pictures on the walls. The comfortable furniture. The kitchen where food appeared like magic. She clicked something long and complicated. Lyra's expression softened. She says this is nicest place we ever stay. She asks if we could stay just a little longer. Just a few more days. David looked at the hope in Nessa's eyes. The exhaustion in Lyra's posture. These children who'd been running for so long. Yeah, he said. A few more days. He knew he was lying to himself. Knew that every day would make it harder to let them go. Knew he was already in too deep. But for the first time in 3 years, David's house felt like a home again. And he wasn't ready to give that up. 3 weeks passed like a dream. David was afraid to wake from it. He taught the sisters to help with the farm work. Lyra learned quickly, her strength making the heavy lifting easier. She could carry irrigation pipes that took David 2 trips. Nessa was too small for most tasks, but she tried anyway, determined to be useful. In the evenings, David found his daughter's old books. Lyra devoured them, learning human standard language faster than seemed possible. She asked endless questions about Earth, about oceans and mountains and cities that touched the sky. Nessa still didn't talk much. Her clicks and chirps were her main language, but she started following David around like a shadow. When he worked at his desk, she'd curl up nearby with drawing supplies he'd found in storage. Her pictures were strange and beautiful, all flowing lines and bright colors. David started to forget what silence felt like. He also started to forget they were living on borrowed time. The reminder came on a Tuesday. Settlement news announced mandatory bioscans for all residents. Every person, every dwelling, every registered occupant. The Galactic Council was cracking down on illegal harboring. 3 days. That's all they had. David sat at the kitchen table, staring at the announcement. Lyra read over his shoulder, her translator chip processing the words. We leave tonight, she said quietly. Nessa looked up from her drawing. She didn't understand the words, but she understood Lyra's tone. Her eyes filled with tears. No, David said. Lyra's head snapped toward him. No, we're not splitting up. We'll leave together. David, you cannot. This is your home, your life. We already take too much. He looked at her, really looked at her. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, she'd stopped being just a scared kid in his barn. Her scales had regained their shine. She smiled now, especially when Nessa did something funny. She started calling him by his name instead of just human. And Nessa, sweet Nessa, who'd started making sounds that were almost like humming when she was happy. Who'd drawn a picture of the 3 of them and stuck it on the fridge with magnets. You haven't taken anything, David said. You've given me more than you know. That night, David contacted his old military friend Patrick. The conversation was brief and coded. Patrick owed David his life from their service days. He didn't ask questions. Freight hauler leaves in 30 hours. Patrick's message came back. Destination, outer frontier. No passenger manifest required. Be at Dock 7. David started packing. Not much. Clothes. Credits converted to untraceable chips. His daughter's photo album. The picture Nessa drew. Lyra packed their few belongings in silence. Nessa watched everything with huge eyes, not understanding, but knowing something big was happening. Where we go? Lyra asked. Somewhere the council can't reach, David said. Frontier space. It's lawless out there. Dangerous. But nobody cares what species you are. You would leave everything for us. David zipped his bag closed. I already lost everything once. I'm not losing you too. Lyra's eyes went bright. She turned away quickly, but not before David saw her wipe them. The next morning arrived too fast. They loaded everything into David's transport vehicle in the dark. Nessa clutched her drawings like they were precious treasures. The drive to the starport took 2 hours. David's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind raced. Every vehicle they passed could be security. Every checkpoint could be the end. They made it through the agricultural zone, past the residential sectors. The starport appeared on the horizon, massive and sprawling. Then the checkpoint lights came on behind them. Stay calm, David said. Let me handle this. The security vehicle pulled alongside. Officer Reynolds. David knew him from settlement meetings. Good man, but thorough. Reynolds approached the window. His scanner beeped as it read David's ID. Bit early for a trip, Hayes, Reynolds said conversationally. Visiting a friend on the station, David lied. Medical supplies. His ship leaves in a few hours. Reynolds nodded. Then his scanner beeped again. His eyes narrowed. Heat signature in the back. 2 sources. Non-human temperature range. David's blood went cold. Reynolds' hand moved to his weapon. Step out of the vehicle. Look, I can explain. Now, Hayes. The rear door suddenly opened. Lyra stepped out, hands raised. Behind her, Nessa trembled. Don't hurt him, Lyra said. He only helps us. We force him. Lyra, no. David started. Reynolds stared at the 2 Draconi. His hand stayed on his weapon. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Reynolds sighed. Damn it, Hayes, he muttered. He looked at Lyra and Nessa. Really looked at them. Saw the injuries. The fear. The way Nessa hid behind her sister. How old? He asked quietly. 14 and 9 cycles, Lyra said. Reynolds was quiet for another moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He put his weapon away. I've got kids, he said. If someone had hurt them, I'd want someone to help. He looked at David. The bioskin teams start tomorrow. After that, I can't look the other way. David found his voice. We're leaving. Today. Good. Reynolds walked back to his vehicle. Paused. There's a gap in checkpoint coverage at Dock 7. Equipment malfunction. Should last about 20 minutes starting now. He drove away without looking back. David didn't waste time questioning the miracle. They drove straight to Dock 7. Patrick was waiting with 3 crew uniforms. Suit up, he said. Once you're on board, you're part of the Wandering Star crew. Far as anyone knows, you signed on last port. The ship was old but well-maintained. A freight hauler that had seen better days but still flew straight. The crew was a mix of species, all with the hard look of people who'd seen trouble. Captain Lewis met them in the cargo bay. Human, maybe 60, with scars and a no-nonsense attitude. Patrick says you're good people, she said to David. Says you saved his life in the war. Yes, ma'am. And she nodded at the sisters. They're with me. Captain Lewis studied Lyra and Nessa. Draconi. Council's got bounties on collection escapees. David's hand moved to his plasma cutter. They're not going back. Easy. Captain Lewis raised her hands. I'm not turning in kids. Just stating facts. You want passage to the frontier, you work for it. All 3 of you. Can you handle that? Yes, David said. What about them? Lyra stepped forward. I am strong. I learn fast. Nessa is small but smart. Captain Lewis considered this. Then nodded. Engineering can use someone who doesn't mind heat. And the galley always needs help. You'll earn your passage. The ship's engines began their startup cycle. David felt the vibration through his boots. Point of no return. Nessa clicked something worried. Lyra knelt beside her, speaking softly in their language. Nessa's expression shifted from fear to determination. She nodded. She says she is ready for adventure. Lyra translated. David smiled. Me too. The Wandering Star lifted off 20 minutes later. David watched Verdun, 7 shrink below them through a viewport. His home for 3 years. The place where he'd tried to bury his grief in routine and isolation. He didn't feel sad to leave it. Lyra appeared beside him. Nessa held her hand, pressed against her side. Thank you, Lyra said quietly. For everything. For choosing us. David looked at the 2 sisters. His throat felt tight. You're my family now, he said. That's what family does. They choose each other every day. Nessa made a sound that might have been a laugh. She tugged on David's sleeve and pointed at the stars ahead. So many stars. So much possibility. The 3 of them stood together, watching the galaxy open up before them, running towards something instead of away. Together. For the first time in years, David felt something he'd thought was lost forever, that he felt hope. Life aboard the Wandering Star settled into rhythms David hadn't expected. Lyra worked in engineering with a Terranian named Rula. The engine room ran hot enough to cook meat, but Lyra's heat-resistant scales made her perfect for the job. She learned to read the ship's systems like she'd been born to it. Rula took to calling her Little Flame and taught her things that weren't in any manual. Nessa helped in the galley. The cook, a human named Bernard, was patient with her lack of speech. He taught her through demonstration. Nessa learned to prepare meals for a dozen different species, each with different dietary needs. She worked quietly, efficiently, and Bernard said she had a gift for it. David handled maintenance. Fixing things was what he knew. Broken pipes, faulty seals, electrical problems. The ship was old and always needed something repaired. He kept his hands busy and his mind occupied. 3 weeks into the journey, everything changed. David was replacing a relay in Corridor 6 when the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed. The ship's automated voice announced calmly that they were being hailed by a Galactic Council patrol vessel. His blood went cold. He ran to the bridge. Captain Lewis was already there, her face grim. Patrick worked the navigation console, calculating options. Council ship arbitrator, Lewis said, demanding we heave to for inspection. Standard smuggling check. How long until we reach the frontier boundary? David asked. Patrick checked his screens. 22 minutes at current speed. But they'll overtake us in 10. Can we outrun them? Not without burning out the engines. Lyra burst onto the bridge, Rula right behind her. What happens if they board? Nobody answered. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. The sisters would be confiscated. David would be arrested. The Wandering Star's license would be revoked. We run, Captain Lewis decided. Full power to engines. Patrick plot the fastest course. Rula, get down to engineering and keep those engines from exploding. Captain, Rula said carefully. If we push this hard, the cooling system won't handle it. Core temperature will hit critical in 15 minutes. Then we've got 15 minutes to reach the boundary. The ship lurched as they accelerated. David grabbed a console for balance. Through the viewport, he could see the council ship gaining on them. Sleek, fussed, built for exactly this kind of chase. Lyra looked at Rula. The cooling system. Can I help? It's too hot down there, Rula said. Protective gear takes too long to put on. I don't need protective gear. Understanding dawned in Rula's eyes. You'd have to manually reroute the coolant lines. If you make a mistake, the whole system fails. Tell me what to do. David grabbed Lyra's arm. No, it's too dangerous. You leave your home for me, Lyra said. Her yellow eyes met his. Let me help save ours. Before David could argue, she was gone, racing down the corridor with Rula. The arbitrator fired a warning shot. It streaked past the viewport, close enough to make everyone flinch. 12 minutes to boundary, Patrick called out. But the council ship will be in weapons range in 4. Nessa appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were huge and frightened. She clicked urgently. She wants to know if Lyra is safe, Bernard translated. He'd followed her to the bridge. She's helping, David said, try to keep his voice steady. Down in engineering, the temperature was climbing past safety limits. David watched through the security feed as Lyra moved through spaces that glowed red with heat. Her scales provided protection, but even she had limits. Rula's voice crackled over the comm, core temperature at 90% critical. Lyra's rerouting coolant flow 3. It's working, but we need more time. Time we don't have, Lewis muttered. Another alarm blared. This time from the ship's exterior sensors. They've locked weapons, Patrick said, targeting our engines. If the arbitrator disabled their engines, it was over. David looked at the security feed, at the ship's layout. An idea formed. Crazy. Dangerous. But maybe their only chance. The communications array, he said. It's damage from our acceleration. If someone went out there and made it worse, we could claim system failure. They can't legally fire on a ship with comm problems. That's EVA work, Captain Lewis said. In the middle of high-speed flight. Whoever goes out there could get torn off the hull. I'll do it, David said. No. Nessa's voice was small but clear. Everyone turned to stare at her. It was the first time she'd spoken in front of anyone but Lyra. She walked to David and tugged his sleeve. Pointed to herself. Click something complicated. Bernard listened carefully. She says she's smaller, lighter, less chance of being pulled away. She can reach the maintenance hatch better than you. Absolutely not, David said. Nessa looked up at him. For the first time since he'd met her, she wasn't afraid. She was determined. She clicked again. Bernard swallowed hard. She says you saved them. Now it's her turn. David wanted to refuse. Wanted to lock her somewhere safe. But he saw the resolve in her eyes. The same resolve he'd seen in Lyra. These weren't helpless children anymore. I'll talk her through it, he said finally. Every step. Captain Lewis didn't look happy, but she nodded. Get her suited up. Fast. The child-sized DVA suit barely fit Nessa. David checked every seal twice. Attached the safety line 3 times. His hand shook. Listen to me carefully, he said, kneeling to her level. You go straight to the array. I'll tell you exactly what to disconnect. Then you come right back. Understand? Nessa nodded. She reached up and touched his face gently. A gesture of comfort. Then she was in the airlock. David watched through the camera as the outer door opened. Nessa emerged onto the hull. The stars streaked past at impossible speeds. One wrong move, and she'd be lost. Okay, sweetheart, David said into the comm, his voice steady despite his terror. See the panel marked C7? Nessa moved slowly across the hull. Her small size was actually an advantage. She wedged herself into the maintenance space easily. Good girl. Now open it. Carefully. The arbitrator was closing fast. Patrick counted down. 5 minutes to weapons range. 7 to boundary. In engineering, Lyra was covered in coolant, working frantically to keep the systems online down on the hull. Nessa's small hands worked the panel connections. Disconnect the blue cable, David instructed. Just the blue one. Nessa pulled the cable free. The ship's comm system immediately started broadcasting distress signals. Automated mayday calls that council ships legally had to respond to. The arbitrator broke off its weapons lock. They couldn't fire on a ship in distress. From minutes to boundary, Patrick announced. Nessa, come back now, David said. But Nessa's safety line had snagged on something. She pulled at it, but it wouldn't come free. David's heart stopped. Bernard, with me, he said, already moving. They reached the airlock just as the arbitrator started demanding they prepare for boarding. 2 minutes to boundary. 1 minute to boarding range. David didn't think. He suited up and went out. The hull was a nightmare of wind and speed and stars. He clipped to Nessa's line and worked the snag free. Pulled her back toward the airlock. 30 seconds to boundary. Captain Lewis's voice crackled over his helmet. David got Nessa through the airlock door. Followed her in. The inner door sealed just as the ship crossed into frontier space. The arbitrator broke off pursuit. They had no jurisdiction beyond the boundary that they'd made it. David pulled off his helmet. Pulled off Nessa's helmet. She looked up at him, scales flushed with pride. Then she wrapped her arms around him and buried her face against his chest. David held her tight, his heart still racing. Don't ever scare me like that again. She clicked something. Bernard had followed them. He smiled. She says she wasn't scared. She knew you'd keep her safe. Down in engineering, Lyra emerged from the heat, exhausted but triumphant. Rula hugged her carefully, mindful of her overheated scales. That night, the crew celebrated. They'd escaped council space, made it to freedom. Captain Lewis raised a glass. To Lyra and Nessa, newest members of the Wandering Star crew. You've earned your place. The crew cheered. Lyra and Nessa stood together, looking overwhelmed. David watched them. His daughters. Because that's what they were now. Not by blood, by choice. By the bonds forged in crisis and trust, they'd save the ship. And in doing so, they'd proven they belonged. Nessa clicked something to Lyra. Lyra smiled and translated for everyone. She says we're home now. This ship, these people, David, we're finally home. David couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He just nodded. They were home. All of them. Together. New Horizon Station hung in space like a small moon. It was massive, carved from an asteroid and expanded over decades into a sprawling city. Lights sparkled from thousands of viewports. Ships docked and undocked in constant motion. This was frontier space. No council. No laws except the ones people agreed to follow. Perfect for those with nowhere else to go. The Wandering Star docked at Port 47. Captain Lewis had arranged temporary quarters for them, while David found something permanent. The station hummed with activity. Beings of every species moved through the corridors. Nobody stared at Lyra and Nessa. Here, Drac and I were just another face in the crowd. David felt tension he didn't know he'd been carrying finally ease. "Welcome to New Horizon," Patrick said, guiding them through the main concourse. "It's rough around the edges, but it's free. You make your own rules here." They found living quarters in Sector 12. Small but clean. 2 bedrooms, a common area, a kitchen. Windows looked out at the stars. It wasn't much that IT was perfect. Lyra immediately claimed the smaller bedroom for herself and Nessa. David took the larger one. They spent the first day making it feel like home. Nessa's drawings went up on the walls. David's photo album found a place on the shelf. Lyra arranged books she'd collected from the Wandering Stars library. David found work easily. The station's agricultural domes needed constant maintenance. His experience on Verdun 7 made him valuable. The pay was decent, enough to support them. Lyra enrolled in the station's educational co-op. It was informal, taught by whoever knew things worth teaching. She absorbed everything: engineering, ship systems, advanced mathematics. Her teachers were impressed. Nessa discovered art supplies in the station market. David bought her everything she wanted: paints, canvas, tools he didn't understand, but she clearly did. She transformed their quarters with murals, bright colors, flowing shapes. Other residents started asking if she'd paint their spaces too. For the first time in months, life felt almost normal. Then Nessa came home crying. David was fixing dinner when she burst through the door. Her scales were pale with distress. Lyra was right behind her, fury radiating from every movement. "What happened?" David demanded. "The Crimson Vault," Lyra spat. "The ship that took us. It's here, docked 3 ports down." David's blood went cold. "Are you sure?" "I know that ship," Lyra said. Her claws extended involuntarily. "I know the Valesian. Who owns it?" "Mordru. He collected us. Killed our parents." David pulled both sisters close. "Did he see you?" "No," Lyra said. "We ran. But if he's here, he might find us. This station is not so big." David's mind raced. They couldn't run again. Couldn't keep looking over their shoulders. Eventually, someone like Mordru would catch up. "We need help," he said, and he contacted Patrick. Then others he'd met through work. A woman named Rebecca, who ran the station's security training center. A mechanic named Ahmed who'd helped David fix their apartment's heating system. One by one, David discovered he wasn't the only one with a story like his. Rebecca had rescued 3 Turanian children from corporate slavery. Ahmed's partner was a refugee from a world destroyed by corporate mining. The frontier was full of people who'd stood up against injustice. They met in David's apartment that night. 10 people who'd all fought to protect someone. "We can't kill Mordru," Rebecca said bluntly. "That brings investigators even here. But we can destroy his operation." "How?" David asked. "Information," Ahmed said. "Collectors keep records, ship manifests, client lists, payment trails. If we expose it all, he loses everything. His clients abandon him. His suppliers refuse to work with him. He becomes worthless." Lyra had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "I can get into his ship's computer system. I know Draconai encryption. I can break it." "Too dangerous," David said immediately. "This is our fight too," Lyra said firmly. "He took our parents, our freedom, our childhood. I want to fight back." David looked at her, at the determination in her eyes. She wasn't a scared kid anymore. She was strong, capable, and she deserved the choice. "Okay," he said, "but we do this smart. We plan everything." They spent 3 days preparing. Lyra studied the Crimson Vault systems remotely, finding weaknesses in its security. Ahmed provided tools. Rebecca taught David and Lyra combat moves, just in case. Nessa insisted on helping too, creating a distraction plan using her art. The night they executed the plan, David's hands were steady. Nessa set up an impromptu art show in the market near Mordru's ship. Free portraits. Her talent drew a crowd, including Mordru's crew, curious about the talented young Draconai artist. While they watched Nessa work, Lyra and David slipped aboard the Crimson Vault. The ship was a floating museum of stolen lives. Cages lined the cargo hold, some empty, some still occupied. David felt sick looking at them. Here, Lyra whispered. She'd found the main computer terminal. Her claws flew over the controls. His encryption is good, but I'm better. Files opened. Decades of crimes. Hundreds of victims. Client names that would make the Frontier's power brokers very nervous. Payment records that implicated officials and business leaders across multiple sectors. Got it, Lyra said, copying everything. Footsteps in the corridor. Someone was coming back. David moved to the door. A crew member appeared. Human. Armed. Who are you? The man demanded. Reaching for his weapon, David didn't think. He moved the way his military training taught him. Fast. Efficient. The crew member went down unconscious. Time to go, David said. They ran. Got off the ship just as alarms started blaring. Met Nessa at the arranged point. She'd finished her portraits and the crowd was dispersing. Back in their quarters, they transmitted everything. To news networks, to bounty hunter guilds, to every family member of every victim they could find. The response was immediate that by morning, Mordru's ship was surrounded. Bounty hunters, angry families, station security investigating on behalf of wrong parties. The Crimson Vault was impounded, its crew arrested. Mordru himself was dragged off the station in chains. But more than that, the data exposed an entire network. Other collectors, their suppliers, their clients. The whole system started collapsing. Hundreds of victims were found and freed. Families reunited. Justice, finally, for people who'd thought it would never come. The sisters watched it all unfold from their apartment window. We did this, Lyra said softly. We stopped him. You did more than that, Rebecca said. She'd come and check on them. You started something. People are talking. About fighting back. About protecting each other. Over the next weeks, more people came to David. Others who'd rescued someone. Who'd stood against injustice. Together, they formed something new. Haven House. A shelter for those fleeing persecution. A network of protection and support. David found himself leading it. He'd never planned to be a leader. But people trusted him. Looked to him for guidance. Lyra and Nessa became symbols. Proof that victims could become heroes. 1 month after Mordru's fall, the station tribunal called them in. David went prepared for anything. What he wasn't prepared for was what they offered. We'd like to grant you official residency, the tribunal leader said. A Turanian named Stone. Protected status under frontier law. And we'd like to offer you the chance to formalize your family. David blinked. Formalize? Adoption papers. Legal documentation. Making you officially their guardian under frontier law. David looked at Lyra and Nessa. They looked back at him with hope. Yes, he said. His voice was thick with emotion. Yes, I like that. The ceremony was small. Just their friend from Haven House. Captain Lewis and the Wandering Star crew. Patrick, Rebecca, Ahmed. People who'd become family in their own way. When the tribunal asked if David accepted responsibility for Lyra and Nessa, his answer was immediate. They're already my daughters. This just makes it official. Lyra cried. Actually cried, tears running down her scaled cheeks. Nessa wrapped herself around David and wouldn't let go. That night, in their quarters, David hung the adoption papers next to his daughter's photo album. Old family and new family. Different but equal in his heart. Papa, David. Nessa said softly. Her speech had improved so much. Yes, sweetheart. Are we safe now? Really safe? David pulled both sisters close. We're home. We're together. And we're surrounded by people who'll fight for us just like we fight for them. That's as safe as anyone gets in this galaxy. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder. That's enough. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 5 years changed everything. David stood in the main hall of Haven House, watching organized chaos. The facility now spanned 3 full sectors of New Horizon Station. 50 beds, medical wing, educational center, legal aid office, training facilities. What had started as a small shelter in his apartment had grown into something that helped hundreds. Rebecca ran the security division, training refugees in self-defense and survival skills. Ahmed managed the technical workshops, teaching practical skills. Dozens of volunteers kept it all running. And at the center of it all were the two sisters who'd started it. Lyra rushed past, carrying engineering diagrams and arguing with her supervisor over her shoulder. At 19 cycles, she was chief engineer on the frontier exploration vessel Pathfinder. She came home between missions, helping upgrade Haven House's systems and mentoring young refugees who showed technical aptitude that she'd grown tall and strong. Her scales gleamed with health. The frightened child who'd hidden in David's barn was gone. In her place was a confident young woman making her mark on the frontier. "David," she called out, "the new power regulators arrived. I'm installing them tonight before I ship out tomorrow." "You need sleep," David called back. "Sleep is for people who aren't trying to double our efficiency," she shot back with a grin. David smiled. Some arguments he'd learned not to WIN the education wing. Nessa taught art to a class of young beings. Her voice was clear now, though she still preferred clicks and chirps with family. Her murals decorated the entire station. People paid good credits for her work. She donated most of it back to Haven House. 8T14 cycles. She'd become the station's most sought-after artist. But she never forgot where she came from. Every refugee who arrived got a welcome drawing from her. Something personal. Something that said they mattered. David watched her show a young Turanian how to mix colors. The child's parents had been killed in a mining accident. Corporate negligence. He'd arrived 2 weeks ago, silent and broken. Now he was smiling at the painting taking shape under his claws. "You're doing good work," a voice said beside David. He turned. Captain Lewis stood there, older now, but still sharp. The Wandering Star had retired from freight runs. Lewis now used it to transport refugees to safety for free. "We're trying," David said. "More than trying. You've built something real here. Something that matters." David looked around Haven House. At the people helping each other. At the refugees finding safety and purpose. At his daughters teaching and protecting and healing. "I had help," he said, his comm beeped. Station Tribunal requesting his presence. David excused himself and headed to the administrative sector. The tribunal chamber was quiet. Stone, the Turanian leader, waited with several other officials. "David Hayes," Stone said formally. "We have a proposition. I'm listening." The Galactic Council has issued blanket pardons for political refugees who fled during the collection crisis. Anyone harboring protected species is cleared of charges. You could return to council space. Live anywhere you want. David's first thought was of Verdun 7, his old farm, the quiet life he'd once lived. His second thought was of his daughters, of Haven House, of the community they'd built. "And?" he asked. "We'd like you to stay," Stone said, "as an official station administrator, director of refugee services, real authority, real resources. Expand what you've started." David didn't need to think about it. "What do Lyra and Nessa think?" "We haven't asked them. You're the parent. The decision is yours." But that wasn't how their family worked anymore. That evening, David gathered his daughters in their quarters. The place they'd first called home on the station. It was bigger now, more comfortable. But it still had Nessa's first mural on the wall. David's photos on a shelf. Lyra's engineering manuals scattered everywhere. "We could go back," David told them, "to regular space. I could get my farm back. You could go to proper universities. Have normal lives." Lyra and Nessa exchanged glances. "What's normal?" Lyra asked. "Safe," David said. "Predictable. Legal. Boring," Nessa added. Her translator made it sound flat, but David heard the humor. "We're needed here," Lyra said seriously. "The work we do matters. People depend on Haven House. Depend on us. You could have easier lives," David pressed. "Better opportunities." "We don't want easier," Lyra said. "We want meaningful." Nessa clicked something. Lyra smiled. "She says anywhere is home as long as we're together." David felt his throat tighten. "You're sure?" "Papa David," Lyra said gently. "You taught us that family protects each other, that we fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Haven House is our fight. This station is our home. Why would we leave?" David looked at his daughters. Why had they become so wise? Okay, he said. We stay. The celebration that night filled Haven House's common area. Word had spread fast. People brought food from a dozen cultures. Music played. Children ran between tables. Former refugees, now thriving members of the community, shared stories of their journeys. David watched it all. Lyra was explaining something technical to a group of fascinated engineers. Nessa was painting live, her art projected on the walls as she created it. Both of them surrounded by friends. By community, Patrick found David in the crowd. You did good, old friend. I just opened a door, David said. They did the rest. You gave them a chance. Gave all of them a chance. That's not small. Later, when things quieted, David found himself on the observation deck. The stars stretched out forever. Somewhere out, there was Verdun 7. His old life. His old family. That he pulled out his photo album. His biological daughters smiled up at him from frozen moments. Lily making faces. Sarah laughing. His wife Maria with her arm around them both. He'd always carry them with him. Always love them. But he'd learned something important. Losing them didn't mean he couldn't love again. It meant he understood how precious love was. How important it was to protect it when he found it. The door opened. Lyra and Nessa joined him at the viewport. Remembering, Lyra asked softly. Always, David said, but also looking forward. The tribunal approved the expansion, Lyra said. 3 more sectors. Medical research wing. Educational partnerships with other stations. Nessa's starting an art therapy program, Lyra added. Using creativity to help traumatized refugees heal. David looked at them. His daughters. Not by blood, but by choice. By love. By the bonds forged through crisis and trust and everyday life. I'm proud of you, he said. Both of you. More than you know. Nessa hugged him. Lyra joined in. The 3 of them stood there, wrapped around each other, looking at the stars. Papa David. Nessa said, yes, thank you. For taking us in. For giving us a home. For choosing us. David's eyes stung. You gave me more than I gave you. You gave me a reason to live again. A reason to smile. A reason to believe in tomorrow. We gave each other everything. Lyra said simply. She was right. They had. Somewhere in the distance, a ship departed. Maybe carrying refugees to safety. Maybe carrying explorers to new worlds. Maybe carrying people searching for home. David and his daughters already had theirs. Years ago, 2 frightened sisters with nowhere to go had crashed into his barn. He'd taken them in, thinking he was saving them. But the truth was simpler and more complicated. They'd saved each other, built a family from loss and fear and hope, created something beautiful from broken pieces. And in doing so, they'd shown others it was possible. Love wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about honoring it by choosing to love again. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who you fought for, who you protected, who made you want to be better. David Hayes had been a broken man with nothing left to live for. Then 2 dragon sisters gave him everything. They gave him family. They gave him purpose. They gave him hope. Most importantly, they gave him a reason to smile again. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure they knew how much that meant. The 3 of them stood together, watching stars and ships and the beautiful chaos of the frontier station they called home. Together. Always together, a family not bound by blood, but by something stronger. Love. Choice. And the unbreakable bond of souls who'd found each other when they needed it most. That was enough. That was everything.